Now, as you mentioned this morning, Qantas should be back in the air today. The company is saying by early afternoon the planes should be up in the air. For more on the government reaction to that Fair Work Australia decision made very early this morning, we'll head to Canberra now. Melissa Clark joins us. Melissa, good morning. The government is claiming that they have brought this situation about, that the government's action and the government's intervention is resulted in this decision. Can the government really claim that?
It can claim that, but it was forced to intervene. So it wasn't its own decision necessarily to intervene. It was the fact that Qantas had escalated this by having the lockout and the immediate grounding of its flights that forced the government's hand to bring this motion before Fair Work Australia to have the bargaining period either terminated or suspended. Now, having done that, yes, it has been successful. The outcome that Fair Work Australia has delivered in a decision for a termination is certainly a good one for the government in that it helps bring about an immediate end to this problem of having all the flights grounded, and the fact that it was a decision for a termination of industrial action as opposed to a suspension means that the federal government isn't put in a further awkward position of the possibility of Qantas not being willing to send its planes back into the air and then the government having to contemplate whether or not to use its own powers that it has under the Act to terminate industrial action. So from that sense, it is a success from the federal government, but this was forced on the federal government to act by the actions of Qantas. Till then, they had been quite happy with the fact that they hadn't had to intervene because prior to that, neither Qantas nor the company itself had wanted to intervene. The other sense in which it has been a success for the federal government is that this has really been the first big test of the Fair Work laws, and as of so far, it has been the Fair Work has come out with a result that the federal government is happy with. So in that sense, a success. But there are also critics saying that it's under this industrial relations regime that has allowed this situation to escalate to the point that it has. So that will still be picked over for some time to come yet.
Well, if they're claiming it as a win, we'll be hearing that later on, I guess, when Chris Evans joins us to talk through the government's response. In the meantime, CHOGM is over and all these politicians are supposed to be back in Canberra. Are they? And where's the Prime Minister right now?
The Prime Minister has already left Perth. She has her own plane that took her over to Perth and back, so that made her travel easier. But they did have to make some changes in that. A lot of her staff were booted off the plane and other ministers and government and even opposition MPs and senators given a seat on the Prime Minister's jet from Perth to Canberra yesterday so that MPs and senators could actually get to Canberra for Parliament to resume today. There were also special VIP planes put on from Melbourne and Adelaide to get MPs and senators from all parties to Canberra in time for the sitting today. This is something that they also faced with the ash cloud issue that happened earlier, so it's not unprecedented, but it certainly is unusual and shows that politicians, as much as others, have been affected by the grounding of these flights. And it was crucial that people get back to Parliament today. The federal government's still trying to push through a lot of legislation before the year's end is out. Crucially, the Senate will start dealing with the carbon pricing legislation, which the government wants through the Senate by the end of the year. And we know how much of a crunch it's becoming because Nicola Roxon, the Health Minister, warned over the weekend that the government's plain packaging legislation for tobacco may not get through Parliament by the end of the year as they hoped, which may mean the rollout of that may have to be delayed. So there's plenty of work for politicians to do when they do get to Canberra.
Melissa Clark, good to talk to you this morning. Thanks so much.